All right, we are talking about distance and length. First of all, measurement. When we're talking about measuring something, it tells you how much of something there is and really how much of what. What are you trying to measure? And so there are a few things that we often measure. We measure time, seconds, right? We measure energy, that's measured in watts. We measure distance, we measure mass, we measure volume of things, okay? And all of these is important that we have an agreed upon standard that we know, like when we say an inch, we're all talking about the same thing. Or when we say a meter, we're all talking about the same thing, okay? And so there are agreed upon units of measure, and there are some really wacky ones out there. So there's something called a Warhol, and that is 15 minutes of fame. And so you can talk about like, I have 7 Warhols, and that would mean that you are famous for 7 times 15, which would be 105 minutes, okay? You can talk about a jiffy, right? Like, oh, I'll have that ready for you in a jiffy. It's actually 0.01 seconds. It's 1/100th of a second is a jiffy. This is my favorite unit. It's called the Scoville unit, and it's the number of drops of water that is required to dilute 1 drop of hot pepper. And like a ghost pepper is something like 35 million Scoville units. That 1 drop of ghost pepper takes 35 million drops of water to dilute it so it's not spicy anymore. And then another one that you may know is horsepower, and it's 550 foot-pounds per second. And it's really how many pounds you can move 1 foot in 1 second. And it's based on the power of 1 horse. And we're going to be talking about distance and length. And so we think about distance as the amount of space between 2 points, and we measure those in meters and feet. We measure them in light years, which is the distance that light can travel in 1 year. And then this one's kind of funny. It's a beard second, which is the length that your beard grows in 1 second. And it's actually about 5 nanoseconds. All right. So we're going to use the common units of measure, not beard seconds and Scoville units and Warhols, but we're going to talk about the 2 common systems of measurement. We're probably most accustomed to inches, feet, yards, miles, okay? Those are their abbreviations there that you'll see. You know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot, there are 3 feet in 1 yard, there are 5,280 feet in 1 mile. Okay, and I'll have a little cheat sheet for you that has all that information on it. But really, scientists, people in the science community, and really all the rest of the entire world besides the United States use metric units. And these are based on the meter, and then you have the centimeter and the millimeter and the kilometer and all of these different measurements that we're probably less familiar with. If you basically think about a meter is basically 1 yard, they're very, very close to each other, then that will be a good ability for you to think in metric units, or start thinking if you have never before. All right. So the metric units have 7 standard units of measurement. Okay. So if you're measuring length, like we just talked about, the standard unit is a meter, and it's abbreviated with an M. If you're measuring mass, how much does something weigh? Which actually there's a slight difference between mass and weight, but we'll get to that later in the year. How much does something weigh? We measure in kilograms, okay? A kilogram. Kilogram was originally the mass of 1 liter of water, okay? Temperature, we don't use Fahrenheit. We don't even use Celsius. We actually use something called kelvins. And a kelvin is based on what's called absolute zero. When you remove all energy from something, it gets so cold that it's the coldest possible thing you could possibly imagine, and that's 0 degrees Kelvin, okay? But otherwise, it's very similar to Celsius. A second is our unit of time. If you're measuring the amount of something we call a mole, and it's counting the number of molecules, the number of atoms that there are, makes a mole, okay? Electric current we measure in amps or amperes, and then luminous intensity, that's how bright something is, we measure in candelas, okay? So these are the standard units of measure that we use. We're right now talking about length. We'll start talking about time and some of these other ones very soon as well, okay? If you need to convert units of measure, okay? These are the prefixes, whether we're talking about any of these, whether we're talking about meters or kilograms or kelvins or anything like that, okay? This kilo in front of the gram always means the same thing. It means there are 10 to the third, which is 1,000 of them, okay? So it's 1,000 grams. So the base unit would be a gram. A kilogram is 1,000 grams. A hectogram is 100 grams. A decagram is 10 grams. And same thing with meters, right? If meter is our base unit, a kilometer is 1,000. And a hectometer is 100 meters. And a decameter is 10 meters, okay? Deca and deci sound similar, but a decimeter is different than a decameter, okay? So for this, you would write km, hm, dam. This is just m, and then this is dm. A cm is a centimeter. Just like there's 100 cents in a dollar, there are 100 centimeters in a meter. It's 1/100th, okay? And then a millimeter, there are 1,000 millimeters in every meter. It's 1/1000th of a meter. Okay, and once again, a meter is about a yard. It's about 3.28 feet as opposed to a yard, which is only 3 feet. Okay, I have a cheat sheet for you that has all those prefixes and it has all of these things to remind you of ratios so that we can do some conversions. Okay, when I look at this list, it might feel very, very overwhelming to me, but what I would say is there's a few that I would just focus on that are the easiest and most helpful, okay? If you can remember, a meter is 3.28 feet, and a kilometer is about 0.62 miles. An inch is about 2.5 or 2.54 centimeters, and a mile is 1.61 kilometers, okay? So those can help you convert between metric and English units a lot more efficiently. So plenty more to come, but good luck and farewell.